Today I'd like to show you basic animation in Unreal. So let's start by going to Mixamo and downloading our own character to use. I'm going to pick this white clown. That guy looks pretty cool. FBX T-pose, that looks correct to me. So once we have our actual character downloaded, let's look at some animations. I'd like to show you how to transition between two animations. So I'm going to pick a basic idle. That looks fine, and you can play with the settings here too. Let's check out posture. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, that looks fine. Let's go ahead and download that. I like to download these without skin, and that way you can give these animations to other characters that you download. And let's get a jump animation. Wow, so many good ones to choose from. Well, let's go with this one. Wow, okay. Download that. So once we have those downloaded, first I'm going to make a folder for this guy. Clown. Okay, so let's import all of that. Let's start with the character. That looks fine to me. And sometimes it can take a while for shaders to compile, but this looks like it's coming in correctly. Let's go ahead and import the animations, jumping and idle. And so Unreal seems to know what we want. You need to make sure that your skeleton is matched to the skeleton you want to use for that animation. So clown looks correct here. And again, it's already matched up. Okay, great. So let's click into our character and make sure it came in correctly. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Sometimes it seems, depending on the character, your computer's speed or whatever, the materials don't come in correctly and then it looks strange. So you'll see here the blend mode came in as translucent. I want to see what that looks like. If I set it to opaque here, if we apply those changes, so now let's go back to our character. Yeah, I think that fixed things. Look at his mouth, that's a lot better. So that's one thing you can do if you're having issues importing your characters, is to go into the materials and make sure their blend mode is set to opaque, and that might help you a lot. I'm going to save all of these. Also, it's a new level. Let's call it the clown level. That's fine. Okay, so we have all these things now for our character, but we don't have anything to put in the world right now. So what we actually are going to need is a blueprint for our character. So let's just call it clown blueprint, clown BP. That's fine. Clicking into our clown blueprint, there is nothing in here. So let's select the mesh here, and you'll see in the details panel the skeletal mesh option. So let's look for our white clown, hook that up. Let's make him fit his sphere collision a little bit better. That looks pretty good to me. And then you'll also see over here, there's an animation set up here, but we can't do anything with this because we haven't set up the animation blueprint. So let's go back out into our characters, different things here. And we will right click, go to animation blueprint right here. And we want that to be hooked up with our white clown skeleton. So clown anim BP. Interesting. We'll compile that. There, that fixed this little thumbprint here. Clicking into our clown animation blueprint. So you'll see here is the final animation pose. So if we only wanted this character to do one animation ever, this is where we would hook it up to. But because we want to do many different animations and depending on different events, we need to actually hook up a system rather than just one final animation pose. So that said, we need to create a state machine. So basically an animation system. People always call this movement, and I think that works totally fine. So clicking into movement, this is the actual state machine, and this is where we will add the individual animations. So let's add a state, so an animation, and we have two animations. So the first we can call idle, and let's drag off of that to another state. The other state was jumping, I believe. And this little node pops in here because this is the transition from idle to jumping. We're also going to need a transition to go from jumping to idle too. So then when we click into idle, this is where we can set up the final animation pose for idle. And that's why you can plug it in here. You're probably only gonna have one animation for idle. There we go. Compile, save. We can see him idling over here. Then we can go into jumping, hook up the final animation for jumping. Compile and save that. And you'll see there's a warning, and that's because we haven't set up our transitions yet. So let's go into the transition for idle to jumping. So how can this guy get from idle to jumping? Let's say if he wants to jump. So I will create a Boolean yes/no variable and name it wants to jump. And I'll make it public. I'll compile it, get it in here and hook it up here. So if yes, if he wants to jump, then he can get idle to jumping here. And this whole thing is just logic for you to understand how you're setting it up, and we will actually put this into programming later in the event graph. So going a step out, now going back from jumping to idle, we want this to happen when he does not want to jump. So we will need a not Boolean. So if he is jumping and does not want to jump, then he can go back to idle. So that looks fine to me. One thing before we forget, now that we have an animation blueprint set up, let's go back to the clown blueprint. Click here on mesh, and now we can hook up our anim class to be clown anim blueprint. And you'll see that activates his animations that we've set up. Cool. Going back to the clown anim blueprint, now we need to go into the event graph where we're actually going to set up the programming and what these different animations mean. Look, it's waiting for us. Interesting. So this is what you plug in here. Try get pawn owner. So the anim blueprint and the character blueprint are two parts of this guy, but their data isn't talking to each other because they're in two different blueprints. So that is why from the anim blueprint here, we need to cast to the clown blueprint so that they can talk to each other. Clown blueprint. Here we go. You can also plug this in here. So this is basically the anim blueprint, getting data from the clown blueprint and setting them up together. And now we'll save this. We'll go back into the clown BP blueprint here. Go into, well, let me show you this before we forget this. So clicking on the mesh here. Because we want to make this animation happen when this guy overlaps with our character. Well, let me just show you. I'll put him out into the world. So we have our blueprint character here. Let's put him a little bit closer on the ground. Ooh, he's hovering. So right now, when we overlap with him or bump into him, nothing happens. I also want to get him a little bit more on the ground. See if that works. Oh my gosh, he's a ghost. I think one way we can fix this is, let's look in here a little bit. Let's try this and see if he's still hovering. Oh, that's much better. Okay. So now if you bump into him, nothing happens. But this is when I would like the transition between animations to happen. Like he's reacting to this guy. Okay, that's weird. Anyways, if we want that to happen, first off, we have to make this guy able to be overlapped with. So if we go to his mesh, we go down to collision. We need to check generate overlap events, as well as change the collision presets to overlap all dynamic. So let's compile and save that. So now he's all set up to be overlapped with. And now we can go into the event graph. We're going to use event actor begin overlap, and we're going to cast to this guy who's right next to the ghost, which is the side scroller character. That is so annoying. Let's try this. How does that look? Okay, perfect. So we need to cast to the side scroller character so that is the person overlapped with. So right here is the overlap. Also what we need to do, we need to create a variable within this blueprint. And what is the other one called? In here it's wants to jump. So in here, even though we're going to set these variables to be the same thing, I'm going to make the name different so that we know that they're different variables that have to be set to the same thing. That was something that confused me for quite a while. Needs to jump, and this is also Boolean and public. Compile and save that. Wants to jump, needs to jump. Okay. So here, when they overlap, we need to set needs to jump to be true. So we will hook this up here. And now, when we go into the anim blueprint, we need to set the wants to jump to be true. Set wants to jump to be true. And right here is where we're going to set the needs to jump equal to wants to jump. Or actually, so it's set here, and we will get it over here and get that and set that. So this is where the two variables become equal to each other. And it took me way longer than you would think to figure that out. So hopefully that is helpful. Okay, so let's just go test this and see if this works. Ah, beautiful. So on an overlap, his animation is activated and he jumps. So he's just hanging out, idling, overlap with him, and then he jumps. He is a weird dude. That is awesome. Cool. So that is the very basics of animation and how you can get animations to happen on events. There are a few little pieces I still want to show you, or one thing in particular, how to stop this animation from looping. So go into the anim blueprint. I believe you go into the state machine, and we're going to look at the jumping animation. So on this jump animation, perfect, here it is. So you go over to the details panel here. You'll see the loop animation is checked. Let's try unchecking that. And play rate. Interesting. So let's try and have a really fast jump. Let's try 4 and just see what that looks like. So let's give this a run and see. Whoa. Okay. So it doesn't loop and he's basically a psychopath. Okay, awesome. That's probably a little bit too fast, but you can mess with it and see what you like. One last thing that's important is to set the animation back to idle once you're not overlapping anymore, because you can see here he's kind of stuck in this weird position even though he's not looping. So that's also very simple. Here we need, in the clown BP, on an actor end overlap. Event actor end overlap. To cast to the side scroller character again, we can copy and paste that. Can hook this up here. And now we need to set it equal to not needing to jump. So if you remember the state machine, that should set it back to idle. So let's see how that looks. Overlap, and then we go away. Oh, awesome. Then he has a more normal position in his idle.